Hi everybody. So this is a video about testing or one of my watercolor play series. So this is about wet on wet. So it's number 1. I have set up my palette with a bunch of random paints. I'm using Daniel Smith paints and I'm just going to use different kinds of paper to see how the wet and wet technique reacts on these paper. The first one here is non-watercolor paper. It's one of the sketchbooks that I have. So what I do here is I just wet the paper, clean brush, wet the paper. And then I will mix a color. I decided to use this sort of burnt sienna, sort of brown kind of neutral color, and I start dabbing it on the corner to see whether it flows, and then I'll start creating shapes. So the paint starts to spread. Different paper will have different kinds of reactions depending on their sizing. So I'm doing a second one, dabbing it on the left to see how it moves, and then what I decided to do was do lines from the dry paper to the wet paper back and forth, sort of diagonal lines, and you can see that the dry part will be a lot more sharper and then it bleeds into the wet part. The next one that I did is blobs of water, 3 blobs of water, and then I mixed another mix of brown, and I just drew a line. I just sort of take my brush and pull them across from wet to dry and wet and then dry again. So I'm trying a different color here and trying to drag them cleanly through both the wet and the dry areas. You can see clearer here the difference. The next 3 blobs I decided is going to be a sort of a dirty water, 3 blobs, and then I'm going to drag a slightly darker color. This is a granulating kind of paint, so I'm going in quite intensely and doing basically the same thing, dragging across wet, dry, wet. See what that does, what kind of effects it has. And then the last one, I decided to go a little bit darker on the blobs. And then what I'm going to do is pull a very, very light color across it. So I really need to clean my brush properly and then pull this light color across the same way. And then I decided to just go back and forth across the blobs with the yellow paint just to see how it reacts. So this is the playing part. So that is that for this paper. I'm cleaning my brush and I'm going to now change to a different sketchbook that is non-watercolor. So yes, we are doing the wet on wet. So this paper I bought from a popular bookshop. It's just a local stationery shop, and I'm going to do exactly the same test on this paper. It is non-watercolor. There's no information besides that it's just a sketchbook. Here again, I put water on the surface before anything, and then added the same exact color as the previous one. Looks like this paper, the water actually sits a lot longer on the surface, and you can see that the bleeding comes out a lot slower and a lot, but yet also not as, doesn't spread so much. These Daniel Smith paints are my favorite. They are artist grade and super, and they're not cheap. But once you started with this, it's gonna be hard to go back to any other paints. So it reacts a lot more on the wet part, where it spreads a lot more, if you see there, compared to the one next to it. So in terms of your preference, once you've done this, you have to wait until all the paint is dry to see the full effect of it. So sometimes, wow, look at that. It actually bleeds really quite a lot across. So this is a sign that the paper actually can hold that paint a lot longer than the previous one. So the water actually just sits on top of the paper and it doesn't absorb as fast. So this probably means the paper has been sized a lot more. That is the effect of sizing a paper. This next one, it seems to bleed way more than the first one. Interesting. I quite like that effect. So I made sure that my yellow paint is fully loaded and intense and not watery, because I want to see how that mix of color affects my light paint when I pull it across the wet page. So come visit my blog. I will have a whole blog post about this to see all the final drawings when they are dry. All right. Thanks. See you later. The next one is watercolor paper. I have two different kinds. This one is 300 GSM, 140 pounds. I think the brand is Clairefontaine. So it seems to have a nice bleed, very fluid. My water mix is a little bit dirty there. Sometimes I'm lazy and I keep using the dirty water. It's not a good practice, but hey. Wow, look at that. The purple color actually travel so much. I love the effect, but we just need to wait until it dries to see the full, what it looks like. Yeah, my water is getting quite dirty there. I need to change this water. So on this paper, the watercolor seems to travel beautifully. All right, changing water. So I always try, without always succeeding, to have two bowls, one dry, one clean and one dirty. And I sometimes, most of the time, I kept mixing it up, and both gets dirty and muddy. Yeah, this has a very big dispersion and spreads quite quickly. Actually, now I decide I'll go a little bit darker in the last blob. I will put a list on the blog what paint I use here, so you can look it up. And now, watercolor paper from Overjoy. I think OVJ means that it's their in-house watercolor. This is an art shop in Singapore. I do not know whether it's 100% cotton. It probably, if it doesn't say it's 100% cotton, it probably isn't. So this is slightly smaller than A5 paper. They're cut already to size, and you can buy them in a pack of 100 for only about $12, which is super value. And I've been liking this paper actually. Ooh, look at that. It dispersed, but not like the previous page. It's dispersing, but then it stops. Interesting. In case it's important, the navy, the indigo that I use here is actually Sakura and not Daniel Smith. And in case it's important, the brush that I'm using is the black silver it's silver black velvet, size 8 round. Right, dispersing beautifully. So on the last blob, I decided to change another dark color that's a little more like sort of brownish darkness. This is a beautiful color. It's kind of, I think it's brown violet or something like that. Anyway, I'm mixing it all up now. And this is the final one, adding sort of a yellow. I'm using now the bright yellow, mixing it with what I've had before. Warmer yellow. Yep. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you later.